Madam Chair, we do have the audio and stream up and running. We can wait up to 15 minutes if you want to see if somebody else pops on.
Yes, please, as we don't have a quorum yet.
I know Tongi is in town. Commissioner LeBrecq is in town, so I'm surprised he's not online.
Yeah, we talked yesterday. He said he would be online.
Right.
He's probably on the phone. Busy guy.
Still says 11.
I can text him.
Hi, Commissioner Pemberton. This is, I think, or in city observer, just checking to see if you're going to have to do something. I tried calling Jim, but I didn't get an answer.
Thank you.
He's called Tommy. He said he's just getting on now. He was on a work call. Tongi's having a hard time getting in. He's wanting somebody could send him an invitation
Yeah, I can forward that to him.
like that.
Like within Zoom, you should be able to.
Okay, so
Not letting you
Karen's gonna send you one right now.
This is for the general public, so we'll pull him in. Have it up still.
He also said for some reason if this doesn't work, he'll just walk over. So he was not able to get in, but he said he's walking over and he'll be there in 3 minutes.
Okay.
Sorry. Do you see this laptop?
Under attendees.
Not come in as a panelist, I'll pull it over. Hello, come on in, we've got a laptop for you. I don't know what's going on, mine won't connect.
I've got them for them.
You got it? Perfect.
So, you're gonna be working off the audio in here, so you won't need to worry about muting. And then when you're ready, I'll turn your video on.
Ready to rock.
Maybe. Oh, I think you have to click it.
Should prompt him to turn his video on over there. There we go.
Madam Clerk, can we begin the meeting?
Yes, ma'am, you have a quorum.
Good morning. This is the February 26, 2021 work session at 11 a.m. Clerk, can you please take roll call?
Sure. I don't know what they're gonna think of this stuff. Ward,
Here.
LeBrecq,
Here.
Benoit,
Here.
Walker is excused, Pemberton is absent. Cease.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to begin with Mary Ann. She has been working on the sign that she's going to use as an example for all of us, as well as some work that she's been doing with Colleen, which is pretty exciting. So, Colleen at the Resurrection Day Historical Society Museum.
Okay. Andy, did you need something?
No, hold on, sorry. Let me turn my phone off.
Okay, I'll just give you an update and then I'll show you an example. So far I've completed 5 sign write-ups, including the Malloy House, the Keating House, the Tides Inn, 6th Avenue Quonset Huts, and the Standard Oil Manager's House. Doug Capra is working on Resurrect Arts Coffee House. So the process that I use, and I just wanted to tell you about, which I think kind of figured out a good system as I went, and I think it's working pretty well. So if you want to do the same, it might be helpful to you. So what I did was I researched each property, and then I submitted requests for information that I thought that I needed to Colleen, Resurrection Bay Historical Society. And so if you have requests, you can just send them to me because I'm trying to funnel everything just through one person so they don't get tons of requests. So then from there, after I started researching, I tried to figure out what is my storyline, like what's the exciting story that people will care about. Then I started looking for pictures online, and I started with the Seward Community Library Association because Resurrection Bay Historical Society does not have anything online, but at least you can look at the Library Association stuff and see what they have to get started. And if you find things, hey Tonga, do you mind muting your phone?
I thought I was muted, I'm sorry.
He's not able to, so you just have to be aware of this.
Okay.
It's on my phone, yeah, I'm sorry.
So then, let's see, where was I? I looked for pictures online at the Seward Community Library Association. And if you do that, just send me your request for your photo numbers with a link. And then, because I'll need to basically fill in a form with them that lists all the photos everybody wants. Same thing for Resurrection Bay Historical Society. So then I kind of wrote my draft as my sign with my narrative, and I stuck some pictures in there that I thought that I could get through one of those two sources, or that I took myself. And I sent my draft to Doug Capra and said, hey, could you just check this out from a historical accuracy viewpoint, and also, is there anything important about the scope historically in this property that maybe I'm missing? Because he asked me to do that. He wanted to take a look at them. So then I had a conversation with him on the phone, and he gave me his thoughts and stuff, and I updated my narratives. Then I sent them to Colleen to take a look at. I swear to God, she must have been like a teacher or a librarian or something in a past life, because she like came up with all these, like, it was mainly grammatical things that I would have never thought of, even after doing spell check and word grammar check and all that kind of stuff. She found things to fix, which is good because we want our signs to be as good as possible. And she also, seeing where I was going with it, could see kind of like the photographs that I had chosen to see if there was anything else maybe she might have that might even be better, that are similar to what I picked. Okay? So then, after that, I met with Colleen at the museum, and she had started a file folder of all these different pictures based on what I originally said I was working on, plus seeing my draft. And we went through all those pictures, and she's like, well, I have this picture that might be better than what you have. Or say I found a picture on the Library Association site, but it was only available through like Anchorage Museum or something. Those are a little harder to get because they're not actually our partner, like the Library Association and Resurrection Bay. So she looked at that and said, well, that might be harder to get, but I have this one that looks like that. So then I was able to kind of switch a few things out. So she had made a folder that had like all of Mary Ann's pictures, and she's done the same for Sue. It's like, here's all these pictures that I have could work. And she sent me a PDF file that was like, here's all your pictures. So I could grab those out of the PDF file and use them for working on my sign narrative. And then after you make your final decisions of what photos you actually want, she's going to upload all of our pictures onto a Dropbox where all the high-resolution photos can live. So she can just put them there, and then I can send that link to the sign designer. So he won't have to like try to do it with emailing back and forth high-resolution big files. That I'm sure that would be a problem somewhere along the line. So that kind of skips that part. The other thing that came out of this that I thought was really cool is I was finding, as I mentioned before, crediting these photos and putting the captions with the photo credits were taking up like 30% of the words that you have for your sign, or more, which is a lot. So I talked to Colleen because I had noticed she had some pictures, low-resolution photos, where the captions were kind of embedded in the graphic. And I said, you know, can we do that? So she's willing to help us. She'll do that for us. So if there's a photo that Resurrection Bay Historical Society has, she'll put the caption within the graphic, which means those words are now available to us because the words are in the picture. So they're just a part of a picture, not words that would be in the word count. So that makes a huge difference. If we find the picture somewhere else, like the Library Association, I haven't talked to Mary Chukas about it, but there's no guarantee that she would be able to do that for us. So, but with Resurrection Bay Historical Society, they will. So that saves us a lot of words for our sign, which is great. So basically, after all of that, I updated my sign narratives and I sent them all out to my property owners. I got a response back this morning from one of them in the Malloy house, like, yes, this looks good. I just want you to tweak this one little thing, which I did. And I'll show you an example of that one. The Standard Oil Manager's house, I think they seem like they're good with it, but I'm going to meet with them on Saturday at their house. I think they want to talk about sign placement, so we'll go from there. And I haven't heard back from the other people yet. So my suggestion to you is if you like that process to follow that, if you want to work with Colleen, maybe you could just send me an email and say, hey, these are my properties. I'd like Colleen to help find these things and to set up something at the museum. Then we'll have the list. I'll just forward it to her and connect you guys, and you can make your appointment and go from there. But it was extremely helpful and really, really fun. And she's found some cool things since then. Like I found out one of my houses, the Keating house, was considered the haunted house in Seward back in the 40s. So there's cool things have come out of it. It's like, really? Wow. So let's see. That's kind of the process, and here's an example. Can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is one. I didn't want, the rest of the process is, so right now I've just sent these things out to my property owners because I want to make sure they're good with it. And then the final thing would be sending these after they're good with it to the State Historic Preservation Office, which I'll do. You know, I'll take everybody's stuff and send it. But I think we should check with our property owners first and make sure they're good before that happens. Because once they go to the Historic Preservation Office, we don't want to go back and forth with them. We just want to send them basically our finals to review. So here's, this sign was all, my story was about the earthquake. So I called, so everything you should, you know, you could put up here, you know, on some of them it put like 313 6th Avenue or whatever the address is. This one happened to have a name that we gave it in our historic preservation records, the Malloy House, so that's what I used. And the next part is kind of like your title, like what's the theme of your sign? So in this case, I said if walls could talk, and I talked about how it's built in 1928 on the hill above 2nd Avenue, and so some houses, avalanches buried some of its neighbors, so it was moved. The original owner, Bessie Malloy, bought the property in 27, $250, and moved it here in 1928. And it's so we're doing during World War II, but the biggest excitement was during the earthquake. And the Anderson family, who lived there at the time, had to run for their lives, leaving the front door wide open because the Standard oil tanks, which were just a block away, exploded and were on fire as the earthquake was happening. The earth was shaking. So I found this fantastic picture that the owners told me about. This actually is in the museum, and it's the house right next door. And their house is this one on the right. You could see the view for what it looked like then. In this document right now is I put down my photo number so I could keep track with the caption, but this is something that would end up, when she gives me the final high-resolution photo, the caption will be embedded down here within the picture. And
Mary Ann?
so then, yes,
If she moves the credits and information into the picture, does that remove our word numbers, our word count?
yes, yes. So for example, this one, the part that says standard oil tanks on fire, blah, 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 will end up in the graphic. The photo number probably won't be on it. That's just for my reference right now.
Okay.
So basically what's going to happen is 1, 2, 3. This is close to 30 words that I'll get back if I want. Right now it's being taken up with credit. So that's why this is really fantastic that she's going to do that for us. Okay, so then the next part, I talked about how Susie Anderson, was 9 years old at the time, and she wrote, there was this exhibit at the museum where all the kids that went through the earthquake drew pictures of what they saw, and they wrote letters about it as part of what they were doing at school. So she showed me her letter, and I took an excerpt out, and she talked about how, all of a sudden everything broke loose, and we were shaking real bad, and she started to scream. And her sister Sharon told me I didn't stop screaming. We saw this huge explosion. It was the oil tanks blowing up in flames. And then they took off from the house, and they went past the boat harbor. They could see the boats being lifted up by the tidal wave. She also had a copy of a letter her father, Val Anderson, wrote to some friends, so I took an excerpt out of that, about how they spent the night listening to the oil tanks exploding, tidal waves coming in, and watching the great red glare of the fire lighting the skies and mountainsides. And we didn't think there was a chance in the world that their house could survive, but it did. This quote I got by Doug Capper said, you should put this in here because this is really important, from someplace else, that's probably nowhere in South Central Alaska. On March 27, 1964, were there more hairbreadth escapes than among the 2,300 inhabitants of the seaport town of Seward. So I put that in here. And then here's Susie Anderson's drawing that she had the original. She actually went to the museum and got it out of storage and brought it over, and I took a photo of it for this sign. And so this caption down here would end up on this photo. I'll have to see, since I took the photo, I'll just try to figure out how to do that. I'm not quite sure. But I'll figure that out. And then the end of the sign is basically talking about how today Seward's different. Seward depends more on tourism. And this house offers nightly lodging to travelers. So here's their stories now, and now they can hear its story. So that's kind of the theme. It's about the earthquake, how things have changed over time, and how this house has seen it all and adapted to the current times. So basically this, you can see it's just 250 words. Here's how I have the titles lined up. I only have 2 photographs in this sign. Some of mine I have 3 and 4. I don't think you could probably fit more than 5. It's just up to you what you have that tells your story. So that's just an example of what I did. And so for us to have one voice, if everybody could do the same kind of thing, like have your title, your subtitle, and then when I take a look at it, and do some final editing, it helps put it in one voice, but set it up like that. So just one example. I have other ones, but I don't really want to show them until I get permission from the property owner that they're okay with them. So.
Awesome.
I would like a copy of that, if I might, Mary Ann, to use as a guide.
Okay.
And by the way, it's excellent.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm happy to send that to you. And Go ahead.
Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Benoit, if you can send that to me and then I can distribute it as a laydown to everybody.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
That's pretty much all I had, I think.
Commissioner LeBrecq?
Well, hello. Sorry about my lateness, et cetera, et cetera. Apologies. So here I am. Wanted to let you know that I had a couple of interesting conversations last week. The first one was with Katie Ringsmith, who is with the state of Alaska with the Department of History and Archaeology. She is a person that we're working on closely for the signage project with the grant. Had a great conversation with her. I did send her an update of everything that we've done so far, how many meetings we've had. I sent her a copy of our timeline. I asked for permission to adjust the timeline, which included the review that they asked for, and I put all that in and sent that to her, and she was fine with that. They're going to try to get their work done in 15 days, not in like 30, like they'd originally said in the original timeline in our grant, so that should be okay. We talked through things. I let her know she made some suggestions about how we might make this engaging during COVID times and using Zoom and so on. I assured her that we're doing that on a regular basis, gave her a schedule of our meetings, invited both she and Judith Bittner to these meetings and or our regular scheduled meetings if she so wishes. So we're in good contact there. So I sent her basically a report on all of our activities, what we've done so far. I also told her there'd be a report coming from Ms. Kingsland as far as hours and those types of things, but more official report at the end of the month as per the timeline that Director Kingsland and I had discussed. And also told her that Mary Ann would likely be in touch with her to ask her some questions as well too. So that was fruitful. I also reached out to Andy Bacon and to ask some questions. We had some ongoing conversations in our committee meetings about setbacks and things like that, and how it could potentially present some problems, right? Because if you go straight off the letter of the law, you could literally end up with a city setback. If a house is built close to the street, you could end up with a setback that could be 20 feet onto somebody's property, or literally in their living room, as somebody mentioned to me. Andy told me to first of all ask me to send him the list, which of course was made in the laydown previously, so that was no secret as far as what the 25 properties are that were voted on unanimously to be included in this round on the signs, and which I did. And he said to me, he said, don't worry about those details, we'll figure those things out together. It is the city's intent to work with property owners on this project, on this CLG project we're working on together. I'll take a look at it, I'll figure it out. He did not feel like he needed to know the sign size, like right now, like exactly what the sign size was. He does want to have ongoing conversations about where signs will be placed, and his only question about that is making sure that they're not placed in an easement, right? So in other words, you can't stick it in the middle of the street, or if you happen to be a business, you can't put it in the middle of the sidewalk, that kind of thing, as long as we're not impeding public access on public land. He will work with us on a case-by-case basis and did not anticipate any problems. He said not to really worry about that, but that he would engage on a deeper basis with us once he had a list. So that was obviously fruitful, because that would have been a problem otherwise for sure towards this project. So those are two of the biggest things I think that happened this week. Otherwise, continuing on with timeline and with my research as well. Thank you, Mary Ann, for the direction and ideas. I will definitely avail myself of that. And thank you everybody for all the work that you're all doing on your stories. I'm looking forward to hearing about those too.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBrecq. Commissioner Ward?
I don't have anything,
All right.
not for this meeting. Did you want me to
Well,
talk about?
I think we should at least mention this. Both of us having been contacted by citizens.
Okay, I'll start. Was contacted by Dan and Judy Ordner of the Passenger Depot. I met with them last week because they're one of our 25 properties. They're looking to apply for KMTA grant. And one of the things, if you're a first-time grant applicant with KMTA, is if you can find a name to your grant, you can double the amount of money that's available to you. Evidently, Judy talked to Brenda, the city clerk. I haven't talked to Brenda about it, but that this was something that we could do as the Historic Preservation Commission. So I sent a note to Cheryl, and Cheryl had been approached by another group. So this is something we may want to vote on, have a policy on, or deal with prior to our next meeting, so we could have an answer for these people.
Commissioner Benoit?
When you were talking, you froze up for a minute, so I kind of missed, like, you were saying that I didn't quite get the part, like, they're applying for a grant, and then you froze up, and so I'm trying to figure out what's the thing that's happening that we're involved with? Can't hear you. You're
Unmute.
It's the Kenai Mountain Turning an Arm grant group. They have grants that we can apply for, or businesses can apply for. Tongi, I think you've accessed these guys granting in the past. Anyway, because Judy and Jan of the Passenger Depot are new applicants, they've never applied before. They're capped off at $10,000. But if they find a sponsoring organization, then they can get $24,000. So they're looking for a new route. So they've approached us, or me, as the Steward Preservation Commission. Would we be willing to sponsor them in their application for grant? I called the KTMA people and said, okay, if I want to ask the preservation folks I need to know what I'm asking them to do. And she said, basically, you're just lending your name, that there is no obligation by us as a sponsoring organization. And then Cheryl, she's got a second group applied, and I just wanted to have a conversation about, is this something we should be doing? Is this something we shouldn't be doing? I thought it might be a bigger question than just the Passenger Depot or the Trailblazers. How can we support citizens who are trying to get money to refurbish their historic properties? Is this one way we could do it? But I didn't want to put the city at any liability, so I wasn't sure of the parameters there. So I opened it up with Cheryl this morning for a potential discussion at our next meeting. Does that all make sense?
Commissioner Thies here. So the difference between the Trailblazers request and Judy and the citizens that contacted Commissioner Ward is that the Trailblazers only want a letter of recommendation. They don't want to be sponsored. So I think that one's pretty easy. But as far as sponsoring someone, they have to have this before what?
March 12th is when the granting cycle closes.
Okay. So this would be something that we would have to have a special meeting for, so that
Yes.
I would, because we can add it to the agenda still. We have till Tuesday to add to the agenda for our regular meeting, correct?
Oh, well, that's true.
And if we had a letter sort of drafted, ready to go, we could send it to them the next day or whatever, but our meeting is on the 11th. It's a tight timeline, but I'm not a big fan of special meetings. If we can get this done within our current framework. And I told them, I said it had to be voted on, that it had to be discussed and voted on at a public meeting, that we couldn't just do it. We just couldn't do it. I couldn't speak for the commission. The commission has to discuss it. The commission has to vote as to whether we feel like we can do this.
Thank you, Commissioner Ward. Madam Clerk, can you please verify with Clerk Ballou that this is something that our commission can do without putting the city at liability, please? And I guess we'll just do it Commissioner Ward's way. We'll just do it, add it to the agenda for the next meeting. Sue, you bring a letter, I bring a letter. If the commission is favorable, then, we'll vote on it and send them over. if that sounds good.
If I could just get, after
Madam Clerk?
the meeting, if I could just get, a little more specific from each of you on the 2 different
Okay.
letters, so I can appropriately fill out the agenda for that.
Okay,
And I'll
thank
add
you.
that to the 311.
Commissioner LeBrecq?
I'm glad that this is coming up and that we are able to address it in some way, shape, or form. I will also say that as I was doing my research, I had one of my properties say, they were asking the question if we were grant makers as well. And I answered back that we were not, and gave them some resources. But that'd be good to come up at some point with some kind of standard language that says what kind of things we are able to do, because we're here to help preserve and to move forward historic preservation, right? So it may be within our bailiwick of what we do. It probably would be worth at some point writing something up that states what our purpose is with that too, so that we can standardly, so we can answer that in a standard way. But I'm glad it's coming up. It's great. It means people are seeing what we're doing and are asking questions about how we can help them, and that's what we're here for.
Yeah, thank you. My only concern is that we don't have time to research and make sure that these grant appliers for these historical grants are doing everything, within the parameters that they have. We don't have time to do that. Mr. Ward?
And I'll be happy to talk to Jessica a little bit more in depth so I can bring more information to the meeting for discussion. It was just something that came up. I didn't know how to answer. I didn't know if that was in our scope. If it's something easy and it allows historic property owners to get additional funding, and it's within our scope, I think we should do it, but I didn't know what to answer. I really didn't know what to say to them. So I will investigate and bring more information to the meeting on the 11th.
Thank you. And I do agree with both you and Commissioner LeBrecq. This is wonderful. And it would be good, as Commissioner LeBrecq suggested, that we have a standard reply, a standard, outline in how we support. Commissioner Benoit.
Yeah, I think this sounds fantastic. I mean, if we can help people get more money to restore their properties just by lending our name as a sponsor, I think that's fantastic. And especially these properties that are on the National Register of Historic Places, obviously they've met kind of like the baseline for that kind of thing. And something like that I just think is so great, because when people start to hear that, oh yeah, I can actually get some money if I have a historic property and do something about it, and the Historic Preservation Commission will help lend their support to this, that really, I think it's really great. So I'm all for it.
Commissioner Ward?
And part of my historic overlay, which is now looming on the horizon, was, the historic overlay guidelines, maybe some local ordinances or guidelines on what is going to be enforced and what's not, application process. And then I was hoping, as a third part of that overall program, was that we would be involved in granting, we don't have the money, but if we can lend our name, if we can start a granting library where people can look for monies for their historic. So it was kind of a 3-pronged project, and the third one is now catching up to me because I haven't really been able to address the first. But this was on the horizon, so I'm really pleased that we're talking about it. It will give me some guidelines for the future.
Thank you, Commissioner Ward. Do any of us have anything else that we'd like to contribute, ask, clarify? Then I'm going to, Commissioner Benoit.
Well, I just want to say, I'm, like I mentioned before, I'm kind of waiting for my people, property owners, so I'll go, yay! And then I could send my stuff to the State Historic Preservation Office, and then I could, if they're okay with it, I could take those and give them to Peter, to do the sign design, so we at least have a batch going that we could start working through that process. Sue has sent me a bunch of her notes and pictures and stuff like that, so I'm working on trying to create her sign narrative.
And again, I would
And
like
then-
to publicly apologize to you, Mary Ann, because I don't have a computer and I am really relying on you. So I just wanted to say publicly, thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm basically working on this next batch, or I've started on her stuff that we can move forward. But as you guys, you know, I've given you some ideas for a process, so you can work through getting your stuff done. So if you, you know, have any questions or need help with that, or have any additional suggestions of a better way to do this, please, you know, let everybody know. And then my hope is that we, you know, we can start moving these things through in batches to the State Preservation Office for review, and to the sign designer, so that none of these people are getting like a, you know, if you please see these 25 signs all at once, because then I think that will muck up our timeline. So that's kind of like my goal, is to kind of like the assembly line, just make them go through in little batches. So hopefully we can do that. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, thank you all for all the work that you are doing. And I thank you, Madam Clerk, and I thank our GIS man. And with that, we're going to adjourn this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.